So thanks for joining me today on Rise Positive Birth Stories. And I'm here with Betsy and Paul, and they're going to share about both of their births, one in a birth center and one at home. So I'm going to just jump into your first one.
Sure. All right. So Ruby was our first experience with birth, and she was born 10 years ago, and it would have been she was born at Birth Center in St. Paul.
Okay.
And so Betsy was kind of the instigating force, I guess, to start the process of exploring the birth center versus going to the hospital.
Okay.
I was raised in a really naturopathic family. So my dad was a chiropractor for 35 years.
Oh, wonderful.
And so always taught me to question, always taught me to research. And I always thought that natural birth was something that I wanted to do. My mom had all three of us in the hospital, but unmedicated.
Okay.
So that was kind of the starting point. And then luckily in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota, there was a lot of help in the birth collective. So there were doulas everywhere. And so, that was something that I just decided that I wanted to pursue an out-of-hospital birth, and Paul was on board. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't quite ready to do a home birth yet. Okay. So I just researched. I'm a research nut, so I started researching what other options were available to us.
Okay.
And there was a midwife who was just opening the first birth center actually here in the Twin Cities area. So we started our visits with her, and we learned a lot, and we took a Bradley class. So we learned a lot about natural birth and found ourselves a doula. And kind of, I think we were really impressed with the birth center, the prenatal visits. They were long, and there was a lot of education there. Yep. And so, so the preparation part was fantastic, I thought. Did you feel really prepared?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. I feel like it was, so there were so many details that they covered much more in depth that I feel
during the prenatal visits.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. During the prenatal visits. And, I was very involved in the whole process because obviously having never gone through it from like the, male partner side, I was curious about kind of how everything was going to go. And, it was really just, I feel like the main thing was really how empowering it is when someone explains like how natural this process is and your body's designed to do this and here's what's happening and why it's happening. It really kind of puts your mind at ease, like, oh yeah, okay, well why shouldn't we do this
that way? Yeah.
That way, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think, I'm always hungry to learn. And so I feel like even in talking with our friends at that time who were having birth in hospital, which is absolutely fine. I think you have to choose what you feel is best for you. But I would be talking to them about birth, and they would be like, what? I don't know. My OB never told me that. Or, even the midwives in the hospital, it's such a machine that there's not a lot of time. They don't have the personal time and then just the knowledge. So I felt like we went in so confident, feeling like I believed in my body. I believed I could do it. I believed it was normal to actually give birth this way, even though in the United States, it's still a smaller percentage of people that, that do that.
Well, I think the Bradley classes are really good because that was it was like hands-on training, like here's what the actual birth process is going to look like. Here's here's the different stages, here's how you identify the different stages. So I think, when you don't know what's going to happen, that's kind of where you're more afraid of it. And you're like, okay, somebody else who knows what they're doing needs to handle this situation. Whereas I feel like the classes, the Bradley class, and then all the prenatal visits really made us feel very confident. Like, oh, okay, if we notice this, this is what's happening. Or if we get to this stage in the birth process and we notice these things, that's what's happening. We know. You kind of know what's coming ahead of time.
Were you able to remember in the moment, though, that...
Yeah, it was pretty spot on.
I think that's why we chose to have a doula for sure the first time. We weren't really sure at first. Mm-hmm. And then actually our Bradley teacher was able to get to be our doula.
She was our doula. So that was nice.
That was awesome. And I felt like because I didn't know how he was going to react, I didn't know what my body was going to do, I felt like when Karen was there, it was like, she's done this 100 times. I mean, hadn't she done 300 births at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah, some ungodly number. And then she taught all the classes, so we were like, if anybody's going to know what to do, it's going to be her. So that was, but it's cost, because especially in the United States, it's not covered. At that time, we had to pay up front for everything, and we were poor, and so we just figured out a way to come up with the money. But I think having Karen there, didn't it feel like we knew she was going to tell us when we needed to go to the birth center.
And it was consistent with what we'd already kind of gone through in the class. So it's just, I think even in those moments where you're maybe not thinking clearly, having that person there that's like, okay, we need to do this now, or
they're smiling at you, and you're like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, they're like, you're doing so great. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what was kind of the journey for Ruby's birth? Like, how long were you in labor? Did you stay home for a long time?
So we were in a condo at the time, and it was just kind of fun because it was, there's just people all around you. I didn't think that would be very normal, but it was just funny. We worked through it because Karen came over, and I think, was it a few days before I was having some contractions?
Yeah, because she was due on the August 3rd. And
she didn't come until the 6th.
Yeah, and you were kind of having the Braxton Hicks contractions, I think, for a couple days, and then we were at my sister's for my nephew's birthday party earlier that day, and then that's kind of when it started to kick in. Yeah, like it was a little more like, just where, and we could kind of tell like, these aren't going away, like they're kind of staying pretty consistent. So,
but I called my midwife, and she was like, hop in the tub or have half a glass of wine. Just seriously, she's like, just try to relax, and it will happen. And so it still took a little while, didn't it, from there? Yeah, because that was probably around dinner time, maybe 5-6 o'clock when it started, and it wasn't until 10 or 11 at night. I know it was late at night by the time our midwife was like, yep, I think you need to head to the birth center now.
Okay.
Yeah, so we did labor in the condo for a while. Like I was on the ball, and Karen was trying a variety of things, and then things seemed to be progressing. So we got in the car.
Yeah, those first few hours were really just relaxed and chill. We had like the relaxation music going, and the lights were dimmed down low, and I think you laid down, and you might have even napped for a little while. And
I think what's really fascinating is the journey to the hospital. That was something that if I went forward and I had birth again, that I would never not birth at home, because that interruption of the birth process, I actually felt like changed some things. Okay. So getting into the car and then traveling across, does it take us 15 minutes or 20 minutes
and then there was some construction on the way, and so
I'm like laboring in the car. And then I just think it throws your instinct off a little bit. Like you get in there, and we had to reacclimate to the birth center, which it took some time.
Then we got to the birth center, and we were the only ones there, which was nice. And we kind of moved from they had the tub.
I did everything and anything.
Yeah.
Any sort of interventions. We tried what is the scarf called?
Rebozo.
Yep, we did the rebozo. We were in the tub. We were out of the tub. We were on all fours. I really thought we were moving fast. I thought it was moving really fast. No, it really took. In the grand scheme of things, how many hours was it? 14? 14 hours for her birth.
From when you got there, or from the beginning of the birthday?
Kind of the beginning, yeah, because it was 11:45 or 11:15 a.m. the next day when she was actually born, and so I think,
well, that sounds longer than 14 hours.
And did you count?
Well, we kind of went from like active labor, like I think.
Because it was like, this is easy, and 9, they were like...
Yeah, it was probably like 9,
like you're still talking to it.
Yes, that was it. That was it. Yep. So we didn't, I think it took a while to...
It was like 8-9 o'clock when things were a little more serious at home, I think, and then,
So then the contractions really, really started, and I was in and out of water, really worked in the shower. Okay. They had a ball in the shower, and then actually sitting on the toilet really, really, really helped me. Okay. And I remember the midwife saying... I looked at her and I was like, this is why people have babies with medicine, right? Because this is really hard. And she looked at me and she's like, honey, the only way to get through this is to go through it. Yeah. The only way to get to the end is to go through. I gave birth on the bed. Okay. And the bed headboard, I think there was a headboard, so I was able to actually kind of hold on to the top of the headboard, and it was like all fours.
Yep. Okay. I got to catch Ruby. I got to be the first one Azani was kind of helping me out, but so that was pretty cool.
Yep. Was that planned in advance, or?
Not really. I was there with Betsy the whole time. I think they told me to go lay down for a couple hours, just because I was up, we were up all night, but. Otherwise, I was there with her the whole time.
Well,
and then
you said you just laid there and listened to me, so you couldn't sleep anyway.
I couldn't sleep very well. I was pretty, excited as well. So, but then when Ruby was coming out, I think we had talked about it ahead of time. She's
Well,
like,
because because they're all talking,
do you want to help? Like, do you want to help catch the baby? Do you want to cut the cord? I'm like, yeah, I want to be all involved.
Yeah,
Yep.
great.
Yep. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So yeah, she. I don't know. I think after she was born, that was a pretty interesting time too, because they don't take the baby from you. You're never separated, right? So that was pretty amazing that they just set her right away, on me. And then, midwives, especially home birth midwives, are very well versed in lactation and all of those things. So it was really great that they knew exactly what to do, and that I didn't really have to do anything. I didn't have to be in a hurry or.
Right.
And then actually, I did have a little bit of a complication at the end after she was born.
Okay.
I had a little bit of bleeding, and so they knew it. People joked that like, oh, midwives, they just bring towels to the birth, or like people would joke when they asked, and I was like, no. I mean, so all the medical interventions that they could handle, so they had a couple of interventions they did, and the bleeding stopped and delivered placenta, and so yeah, it was.
Yeah, I got to cut the umbilical cord and got to hold Ruby while they were tending to you, and it was just I don't know, it was really. I just remember it being kind of a surreal experience, because I think you have all this preparation for it, and then you go through it, and it's it's a pretty intense life experience, having never seen it before.
Having never.
But it was, I don't know, I think after the fact, it was just like, I was so glad we did it that way, because I can't imagine doing that in a sterile, controlled environment, especially if they in a lot of hospital settings they'll take the baby away and go.
Do you mean like overly sterile?
Yeah, overly sterile. That's what I mean. Just I'm just really glad we did it in the setting that we did it in.
Well, because when it was all said and done, we were in a really nice hotel. That's what it felt like a bed and breakfast. And then they were like, "All right, what do you guys want to eat?" So our doula called, and I hadn't had sushi for a long time, so she got sushi for us. She fed it to us. She's also a photographer, so she took photos for us. Okay. It just felt like you were just like at home hanging out, kind of, versus feeling like there's all these protocols they have to do and hospital equipment everywhere, which to me makes it feel less of a natural process, So, and then they're just like, just snuggle in, everyone. Just snuggle in. You guys sleep until you want to get up, and then we'll help you get ready to go home. And everybody's there. Everybody's there helping, and we didn't have any provider change. We didn't have any nurses change, just because it was an hour. Everybody stayed with us, so that was pretty amazing.
Yep. Yeah. And then the follow-up care was great as well. Okay. And it was just really.
Because they came out to us actually for the first couple of visits.
Oh, okay. So, and how many times? And was it for that 6-week period, or what was the? Do you remember?
I think so, roughly. Yeah.
Yeah, I
probably
think
a month
she came
or two.
Two times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, subsequently, do we go in maybe one more time?
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Probably.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Sounds lovely.
Yeah.
That was really good.
And then you did a home birth with your second.
Yes. So
it would have been 3 years later. So.
Actually, the assistant midwife, who was at the birth center with us, her name's Kate. She actually graduated from her program and opened a home birth practice.
Oh, funny. Okay.
And so, health foundations at that time actually started growing, and they had a lot of changeover of staff. And we had known Kate, and she had been continued to be involved in our life. And so we opted to go with her. So that was.
So did you do the home birth because you wanted Kate, or did you do the home birth because you wanted a home birth?
I wanted home birth, and I didn't go with Amy because I knew they were busier, and I wasn't familiar with those midwives. For me, it was a lot about the connection to the person. And I think at that time, I want to say, I could be wrong, but I want to say Amy wasn't doing home births at that time because she was heading the birth center. Yeah. So we went with Kate because we knew her, and then Azani was actually her on-call. So we knew that there was a possibility that Azani could come to the birth, and so then it would be like a double. They'd be at both of our births for our babies.
Well, I think like you mentioned with Ruby's birth, that kind of interruption when we had to leave the house to go to the birth center, and really when if you think about it logically, your body is what's doing all the work, so the setting isn't as important unless there's some sort of intervention that needs to happen.
You mean like an emergency?
Yeah. That's really the only factor I think that be different from being at your house versus at a center where they have the equipment there. So for us, it was kind of like, okay, an uncomplicated birth, like a normal.
Well, and the midwives bring a lot with them anyway for a plethora of emergencies. But I didn't. I mean, the birth center and talking with the doulas and all that I had learned, everybody's like, your second birth goes even faster typically than your second birth goes faster than your first, right? So, and I just wanted to be at home. Yeah, I just wanted to be able to get out of the tub or wherever I was and just snuggle right back into my bed. That was just kind of the thought in my mind. So,
well, just the relaxation of being in your own, your familiar environment, I think.
And we had friends that had done it now that we had met, through this birth collective, and them telling us their stories, and so, and we had such faith. We had such that the community really helped, to know that it was a really wonderful thing to do. Yeah. And I read a lot of Ina May Gaskin's book, and I actually went to see her speak as well. Okay. So that led a lot of the reading and the research led me to. And then we had
that helped you feel more comfortable with it. Okay.
Yeah, the more that I learned, the more, Ina May Gaskin at her conference shows an elephant giving birth. And so you watch that for a while, and she stops it, in the middle, and she's like, does anybody want to come in and intervene in this elephant giving birth? Would anyone approach the elephant? And everybody's like, no. She's like, why do we do this to women?
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's I thought it was so fascinating. So we hired another doula, just a different doula. Okay. With Kate. Kate was so we went to Kate's home. So she had an office adjoining her home, which again felt so personable. And and then
that was all of our prenatal. Was at her house. Yep. And then I think, and then for me, the part of the process, is of course going through all the scenarios, like, okay, well, if this happens, we might not be able to do the home birth. If this happens, we won't be able to do the home birth. So just knowing ahead of time, like she did a really good job of kind of outlining, here's the path we need to be on. If we deviate outside of that, then we may not be able to do it at home. And so I think just knowing that builds some confidence too, because then you kind of remove that unknown again of like, well, how do we know if something is not going the way it should be, or And
there wasn't one question she couldn't answer, and that she didn't know what to do. I mean, she is extremely organized person, so she even had a binder with emergencies written. So we felt really prepared. Again, and we took the Bradley class again. We took a refresher course, and it was focused more on home birth that time.
And then we did a birthing tub at the house. So it was basically the big, inflatable tub, basically. And so we...
it was with Clyde's birth, it started in the middle of the night. So Clyde is due on August 6th, and Ruby was due on August 3rd. And they're actually born on each other's due dates.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was her birthday party we were getting ready for.
Yeah, we made a bunch of cupcakes.
A few days before.
What is it with birthday parties?
I know, right?
I didn't even put that together.
Literally.
So we had made all these cupcakes, and I'm like, I'm just going to go on with life, because I'm not one that the due date, it's just a number. Yeah. So we just, I'm just going to keep going on with, Ruby's going to be turning 3, and sure enough, the night before the birthday party, in the middle of the night, I wake up, right? Isn't that what happened?
Yep.
Yep. And there was definitely contractions. Like this time I knew we were in labor, and so we called our midwives and everything, and they were all like, go back to bed, go back to bed and relax. So it was midnight, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I just kind of laid there. I don't remember if I slept or not, but we got up in the morning, and then we knew it was like, all right, here we go. But we took care of Ruby, so Ruby had to go somewhere. I opted not to have her home during the birth.
Yep, Ruby went with Auntie, and our dog at the time went with my brother, so I went with Patrick.
Okay. Yep.
And it was. I mean, one of my favorite things was taking the walk around the block. Because it was a beautiful morning in August, and so...
And we lived on like a 1950s street that it wasn't a cul-de-sac, but it went around.
Just really quiet, and I just remember, was it Jess there at the time? So our doula was there, and she's like, let's just go on a walk around the block.
And then I'd stop every 4 or 5 houses and have a contraction.
Okay. How did you handle those? Like physically, were you standing? Were you leaning on?
I was standing. I was leaning on them some. Mm-hmm. There was a definite shift though in the second birth. There was a lot more inwardness for me, and a lot more power I felt in the second birth because I had done it now, which I think really empowers women once you do it without any medication. It almost feels like a rite of passage, right? I mean, so I really was more
Yeah, I feel like the first birth with Ruby, I felt like I was offering a lot more support, whereas I feel like the second one you didn't need as much support. You weren't seeking as much support. So,
and that's how you felt as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just more maybe in control. Is that the right way to?
I think so, and I think just more like, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's just this birth or what, but I felt like I needed more quiet. I felt like I needed more, and that's why I think it's so important when we watch animals give birth. Some want to be here, or some want to be where it's quiet and dark, or So I think it just depends on, I don't know, the situation. But because we walked around the block, and then when we went back into the house, I was in the bathroom, and I was able to kind of hold on to both walls.
Okay.
And they were like, "What would you need? What do you need?" And I'm like, "I just want to be by myself." So I did a lot more rocking and moaning and humming, and I don't think we got in the tub at all or anything, did we?
No, because Kate said, "Do not get in the tub until I get there, because as soon as you get in the tub, things will start moving fast."
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. So we had I had the tub all filled and it was ready to go, and then
Okay.
I think as soon as our midwife got there, then I think you got in the tub, and it went. Then it went really quick from there.
Yeah. She was right about that then.
Because it was only, how many hours was his? It was only like 6 hours, I want to say.
Yeah.
So we blew up the birth tub, and then I got in.
Yes.
And our doula was like, called our midwife. She said, "Come on over."
Yep, got there, and then that's when you got in the tub, and
then Azani came.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
So
then
the second one came right away. Okay.
Yep.
So they were pretty confident you didn't have long to go.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. And it would literally, what, you were in the tub for maybe
that's where I have no concept of
an hour
any time
or
at that point.
because I remember I was even, because we had three of them there, right? We had Kate,
Azani, and Jess.
So there were all three of them, and it feels like I went in the other room to do something, and then I came back and they're like, "Okay, the baby's coming now," and I'm like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, I thought we'd have at least a couple more hours, but yeah, it went really quick.
And I'm in the tub, and I have the moments that I remember are that the tub was amazing because it was inflated, and it was like I could hang over the side of it.
Okay.
And I consciously remember having contractions and literally be able to go into moments of clarity this time, where I can remember talking to someone.
Okay.
Like the contraction would stop, and then I'd look at Azani, and I'd hang over the tub, and she would come up to my face, and she'd be like, "You can do this." She looked into my soul, which I will never forget. And she was like, "You're gonna do this, and you're doing great, and this is where we're at. She's like, do you want to see the baby? I have a mirror. Do you want to see the baby? Baby's coming." Mm-hmm. And I just remember them laughing that the baby was coming, and I was like, "Oh yeah," I had that moment again. We're like, "You guys stop laughing.
Right?
It's not really funny,
Why is everyone smiling?
So yeah, I remember a few moments of just positioning and being told to push and coach through it, and then because his head came out first underwater, was so cool, and then they were like, "That's okay, it's okay," and then. So they coached me really carefully through the next few contractions and pushing, because they didn't want me to obviously tear which was that was really helpful, because I did have a little tearing with Ruby. So
yeah, and I think being in the water, doesn't that, it kind of softens everything and relaxes everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So when he came out, I caught him myself and lifted him up. We didn't know the sex of either baby when we had them, so lifted him up, and I was like, "What is it? What did we have?" And they were all like, "Why don't you look? Why don't you look and see?" So then I got to say it was a boy, and and then
it was pretty cool.
Good photos of us, and that was an amazing process. And then for me to have one of each was just that surprise. So then they got us out of the tub, so Clyde never left me.
Okay.
And then we walked, I think, I don't really remember, they walked me to my bed, but then we're just right in the bed. They do all the well check, everything right there in the bed, and weighed him right there, and it was amazing.
That was the coolest part of it. It was just literally walking down the hall to the bedroom and being like, "Okay, and we're home."
It almost felt like a luxury to have someone there doing home care.
Yeah.
When really it's, in America, it is how many times less than the cost of having a hospital birth,
right?
And all those things, just the extra things that they do, just aren't necessary for.
Right.
They weren't necessary for me.
Right.
So
and we said, as long as it's a normal, straightforward, uncomplicated birth, it just
I'd never do it any other way.
I would never do it any other way. Yeah, it's just, it just made so much sense. It just made so much sense from like the relaxation piece of it, just being in your environment, and then literally you have the baby in like your home. There's not another transition. You know, and then just being able to be like, oh yeah, Clyde, you were born right there, and then in the living room.
Yeah. And it was so quiet. It just didn't feel like it was on anybody else's agenda, but your own. And I think that was really beautiful. And then we could just go to sleep.
Yeah. This was really, I don't know, that was really cool. I actually kind of wish we would have done a home birth for the first one. You know, I mean, having done it the second.
Well,
time.
and I would say though, considering our families, there was no one we knew in our circle or our family of friends at that time, right? That anybody that had a out of hospital birth.
Right.
So
at all. So this is even your second. Okay.
So I mean, first that I had one in a birth center, people thought that was crazy, and then to have one at home was still, I had broken another barrier, like, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's, I don't know.
I still remember telling people, like, you know, people would ask, like, oh, so where'd you go? And we're like, oh, we had him in our living room at home. And they're like, on purpose? And I'm like, yeah. And then, you know, I didn't explain it. I'd be like, well, yeah, it's the very, like, planned out process.
It isn't like you just are like, yeah, let's just have it at home. Yeah.
And that was, I mean, for most people, once I'd explained to them, like, there is a very significant list of protocols that we have to follow. Like, we have to fit in this window in order to do it at home, you know, for safety and just for all the things that most people would be concerned about. Like, well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? And it's kind of like, well, yeah, we prepared for each of those.
But the thing is that if you start to learn and you start to educate yourself, you learn that actually most births do fall into that category.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So.
Right. The medical industry, it's about, you know, a lot of it is about safety and being able to control the environment. And I think, you know, with birth, it's a lot more controlled than I think a lot of people think. You know, it's a very, I feel like our first birth and our second birth, it was the same steps, the same.
You mean the process of birthing out of hospital is a very.
I'm just saying the birth process itself. I think in a hospital setting, it's let's say you're treating something. It's a very systematic approach of we want to control all the variables so that we get this outcome.
Okay.
Whereas with birth, it's kind of like the birth process. Your body kind of controls all those variables naturally. Like someone doesn't need to come in and try to keep it under control or intervene with things. At least that was my kind of takeaway from it, having gone through it outside of that environment.
Is that how you felt as well, that you knew what to expect the second time? Or in both cases, did you just feel like my body's taken over and I'm...
Yes, I thought it was absolutely, animalistic is probably not the best word, but it felt very primal. Like it felt like I didn't need to know what to do. And then I think all those people around me, you know, just guiding me made me feel safe. But yeah, I definitely the second time felt like, okay, just listen to your body. That's probably why I was humming, moaning, and rocking, and just trying to let it all happen.
Yeah.
Was that different than the first one? You weren't doing the humming, rocking, moaning?
I think the first one, I was more afraid, to be honest. Probably just the first time going through it. Mm-hmm. And I do think truly that there was a shift from when I left my home environment and then going into the birth center, just that transitional time. I think that actually slowed things down. Yeah. And then because it wasn't kind of progressing, maybe I almost felt like I was starting over again, like why things didn't continue to progress. Okay. So there was a few hours there before I think labor actually kicked back in again. Mm-hmm. And who knows, maybe that had been the same had I stayed in my home environment or not.
Well, and a lot of first-time births do end up going longer. I mean, has that been your experience too? Yeah.
Well, it's the first time your body's doing it. The second time, it's kind of like, let's do all these things at once.
Yeah.
Instead of,
well, and I think, truthfully, I wasn't sure about motherhood. I think it has a lot to do with your relationship with your own mother. And I was nervous about that. I was nervous about becoming a mom and if I would be any good at it. And so I think those apprehensions can play into it as well. Like, you have the baby and then what? Like, the birth is phenomenal and amazing, but then you have to go home and raise this child. And I think that I had been a teacher for, a decade and I just didn't know. I think it was just the unknown. So I would say that played a role into my first birth for sure.
Yep.
Oh, interesting. And very self-reflective.
Yeah. And then the second one, I feel like it was so powerful because I knew I could do it.
Yep.
You know, and I think that actually, for me, the biggest takeaway from birth is that women going through that process is such a natural process for women that it actually empowers you to be able to do so many other things. It actually, I feel like, empowered me to be an amazing mom because I've always known I have that innate power within me to do these things. Mm-hmm. So I think that when we give that to more and more women, we can actually change the world, because through that process, it changed my life forever. I would never do it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. Yeah, there is some element of, well, I went through this really hard task, or, you know, however you took the experience, and then it just makes you that much stronger in some ways, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And confident.
Right, and to believe that your body has power. And I knew that growing up. So when you adjust the body through chiropractic manipulation, actually the body heals itself. That's the whole process. So I was taught to trust and believe in my body. And this actually was very affirming. So I don't think it was a coincidence that this is the way that the story goes for us, because It was really, I was taught those things from a very early age, and so it was amazing.
Yeah, it probably helped quite a bit as well, because you were already from the onset a bit more confident probably than the average person.
Yeah.
In your body's capabilities. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was good. It was amazing. It was something you never ever forget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was pretty open, kind of to, what path Betsy felt most comfortable taking, and so initially I would say growing up with a traditional Western medicine, been born in a hospital myself, and that was kind of all I was familiar with. There was just a little bit of, I would say, normal apprehension about the unknown, like. How does this work? Like, I don't know anything about this. Like, yeah, kind of like just what to expect in the birth center environment versus the hospital environment. But I think overall the process for me, like coming at it from more of the guy's perspective, and I don't know, my brain is just much more procedural and analytical, and I want to know kind of what the steps are going to be. Yeah. And and being a pilot, it's always, okay, if this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do this. Mm-hmm. And we always have kind of plans for that. Yeah. And it was very planned out, and so I felt very confident that there is a plan for whatever happens, and they did a really good job educating us, versus I would say there wasn't much like we'll take care of it, don't worry about this or that. It was a lot of
transparency.
We're going to give you the knowledge so that you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Right, and make a birth plan. Like, we had to write a birth plan, and
yep.
I feel like you were very open though and supportive.
Yeah. Yep.
I was just thinking about, if you're considering out of hospital birth, is to watch footage of births if you can get your hands on it, because remember how many births, I mean, you didn't really watch as much of the labor, but remember how many births we watched in all of our classes, remember? Mm-hmm. And the moment that they give birth, having never seen it, how many times do we both just cry? I mean, it was like, seriously, because do we see really any, unless you're on a farm, how many people actually see a live birth of any kind ever in their lifetime?
Yeah.
And more and more obstetricians aren't actually even experiencing that in their careers. So watching it was that was so like powerful too, to watch, be like, this could actually happen to us. And so yeah, that was a fun memory, watching those videos and be like, wow, we're actually going to do that.
Yeah.
But it was empowering to know, that's what this can look like, Well,
I think we go back to it a lot. Like, if we're going through a struggle or something that's difficult, like we've said it probably dozens of times. We were like, listen, we remember our birth, like the kid's birth, like we were able to do that. That was a really, it's kind of a hard thing to go through or whatever, but if you're feeling like you have a lack of confidence in other areas of your life, like, it is a really empowering experience.
For you as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think just when believe in something, or I trusted our team, I trusted Betsy, and being able to go through that process and having it be successful kind of, gives you that extra confidence.
Sure.
So.
And I think we went up against a lot of societal pressure as well. A lot of heavy questions from family members and people who hadn't done it and didn't understand. And so I think you have to know, to birth out of hospital, you have to know it's something that you really, really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you handle that? Did you avoid it, or did you answer their questions, or did you try to educate?
I learned pretty quickly who I could engage and who I couldn't.
Okay.
So it was a variety of those things, because as soon as they started questioning and they weren't willing to hear me talk, then I knew it was best to just be like, yeah, I'd say probably read about it, and they'd be like, you know what, I think I'm kind of done talking about it now.
Okay.
Those people, and then some people were really curious, so then I would tell them everything because I'm a nut of research, so I just blah 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 blah. Yeah. And then I don't know. We just did a lot of talking just between the two of us as well. But that was hard. There were times when it was having people feel like they're questioning what you're doing, or the efficacy of it.
But I would usually go down the path of educating people, like explaining, like, well, here's the process, here's the steps, here's the training we're getting. We're taking this class. Even the Bradley class was 18 hours of class.
And most of our friends did a 2-hour weekend course. So we knew right away, like, oh, not that these people aren't educated. They just weren't willing to educate themselves. So I felt like I was...
They're only familiar with the hospital process.
Right. But they weren't interested in learning. So it was easy to just be like, yeah, okay, well, we're just different. So it was a lot like just having to just move on. But there were, I think, a lot of people that learned and asked questions from... And subsequently, people who have called now. So, the fact that you called and wanted to do an interview, it was like, well, yeah, we've had a lot of people ask. Not as much anymore now that we're getting old.
Right. Yeah.
Your daughter's 10? How is that possible? I don't know.
It's kind of funny. It's still pretty fresh, though. I don't know. The experience doesn't leave you.
Yeah.
It's definitely, like, right there.
Yeah.
So.
Amazing.
Those visits were so, like, it almost felt like we were hanging out with family by the time it was over.
Yeah. Okay, this is going to be intense. Like, am I going to be able to handle this?
It was like, I did it, we did it, it's amazing.
Yeah, your body does just kind of know what to do. And it just does it.
All given birth. And again, some of them were like, I would give birth 12 more times, but I don't want 12 children.
I remember saying it felt like there was nothing I could do.
Having a tribe of women that were like, your body knows what to do. We are going to just help your body know what to do. And that they were so confident. And then it was this community of strength and womanhood. That was probably what helped me the most. Just these women that I knew had my back.
Just like, okay, tag, I'll do the next contraction. You go rest for a little bit, and it's like,
They were in love with the process. Instead of what culturally in American society, birth hurts, it's scary, it's messy, it's yucky, and it's disgusting. This idea that it was one of the most beautiful things that you'll ever have happen to you in your life, and that helped me the most. Just to visualize how amazing it was going to be.
Just being engaged and learning about the process and being a part of the process, and not just saying, hey, good luck, honey.
Or watching from the sidelines.
Oh, this really isn't like as hard and difficult and scary as I perceived it to be before I knew anything about it,
So it's not just having the birth and having your child. You learn so much about yourself. Oh, I would do a water birth 100% next time. Had I done the first one again, that water felt so nice.
Okay.
But I do feel like it relieved a lot of things versus giving birth just on land, as they would say.
Yeah.
This is absolutely, it's going to change your life. And they were right.
Yeah.
So.
Whoops. Hello.
Hi. We're just doing an interview, and she's recording it right now.
Hi.
Yeah, she's recording right now.
So,
Hi.
you guys say hi?
Hi.
This is Yasmin.
I've heard your story now.
Ruby, we're talking about your birth story.
Yeah.
Not mine.
We're talking about yours next.
So I haven't heard your name yet.
Hey, Ruby, you just have to be maybe a little quiet. Thank you. That's not in their nature.
Well, you get a clip of who we're talking about now.
If you're happy to keep it.
Yeah.